Jackson Systems is your controls expert in the HVAC industry. With our top-notch technical support and customer service, we make life easier for you, the HVAC contractor. We offer free trainings on any products sold here at Jackson Systems, along with our filter fetch program, free thermostat imprinting, home and business automation with connected sensors, cameras, and even smart stats from Nest, Ecobee, Honeywell, White Rogers, Google, and more. Visit us at jacksonsystems.com to see the products that continue to win industry acclaim among contractors worldwide. Jackson Systems, controls done right.
Welcome to the Tradesman, everybody. Today we're going to talk about total effective length. Now, I've really been enjoying these short and sweet podcasts, and I hope you have too. If you go over onto YouTube, there's a channel called WJR Pro. It's an old remnant of the Working Joe's Roundtable website, which I had for a while. All of these podcasts upload over there as well. Now, I would prefer for you to download them with whatever podcast app you're using and listen to them. But if you want to leave a comment, and I look at all the comments, you can go over to WJR Pro, find the podcast video, which will just be a blank screen with the Tradesman written on it. Just an audio podcast, but you can comment there if you want to. We're going to talk about total effective length of the duct system today. It's a pretty simple thing, but we want to go in order so we can better understand this whole process. By the end of the process, the idea would be that you can figure out what a duct system's total effective length will be, take into account your available static pressure, and predict what your duct system will do. And also evaluate whether or not the duct system that's in place will be sufficient for the machine you want to install. Now, there's a lot of rules of thumb out there, and I use a lot of rules of thumb because you don't go into detail every time you do a job. There's about 1 million different duct fittings with 1 million different values, but after a while, you start to memorize and start to be able to evaluate them or have just your gut feeling. You know, you hear a lot of old-timers say that, well, I don't think this is going to be good enough. And they're right because they've been through it about 100 times. We're going to look at the technical aspect of it so we better understand it. Then as you go along and get more experience, you get a feeling for what's good and what's not right off the bat. So what is total effective length? Well, that takes into account all the straight sections of pipe and all the fittings in a duct system to give you a numerical value. Now, of course, a straight section of pipe is pretty simple. It's just count it off. You have a 10-foot section of pipe, that's 10 equivalent length. Pretty easy stuff. But the tricky part is every single fitting has an effective length, just like the dryer vents I talked about before. How they used to count an elbow as 10 feet and a 45 as 5 feet. That'll allow you to ascertain whether or not your dryer can overcome the friction in the ductwork. So we're going to talk about a few values here. I have a few on the screen in front of me. I'm just going to run through them real quick so you get an idea of what we're talking about. Let's talk about supply boots. We have a few different kinds of supply boots. There's stack heads that go up into the wall. There's regular floor boots. There's ceiling registers, which are very similar to floor boots. So let's look at a few of them. I'll describe them to you. A lot of you guys who have been at least on 1 or 2 installs will know what I'm talking about. What I used to call a torpedo boot is actually termed a center in boot at the supply house. I learned this a long time ago, and I've called them torpedo boots for 20 plus years. You have a boot that enters from the side, the small dimension. If you have a 10x4 boot, the round connection will be on the 4-inch side. It has a smooth transition. Now, a boot like that has an equivalent length of 50. So just remember that. If you have a 10-foot piece of pipe, that's 10 foot, 10 equivalent length. But a center-in boot is 50. That's how much friction a fitting like that produces. If you look at a straight boot, and that's a pretty smooth transition, similar to a squared around, it's 20 equivalent length. Same thing with a stack head. You see old sidewall registers for oil furnaces and gas furnaces. They go up into a stack in the wall. Well, a stack head boot at a slight angle is the same thing, 20 equivalent length. There's a few other pictures down here, squared around being 35. Some of them are contingent upon what kind of throat size, what the radius is, but we're going to just go off some general measurements. And as you go along, you can get a list of these online. I mean, I found a whole bunch of them online, including some technical information you can find at hvacrschool.com, which is my buddy Brian, who has the HVAC School podcast. A lot of this information, I'm actually looking at it right here. because I have a ductilator that's from a Mana, and the wording on this ductilator is written small enough so no man can see it, including me. So we're looking at all these fittings, and I'm not going to go into all of them. We're just going to start at this basic process. You're going to add up all of these fittings, and you're going to come up with a total effective length. Let's say you had a 20-foot section of pipe, you had a reducer that's 5 equivalent length on that pipe, and you had a takeoff that was, let's say, 10 equivalent length, 10 more foot of pipe, and you go into a boot, that's 20. Now I made a whole bunch of numbers right there. Let's see if I can remember them. 20 foot of pipe, and then 5, that's 25. You have a takeoff, that's 35. 10 more foot of pipe, that's 45. Then a boot, that's 20, and that's 65. So just in that run is 65 equivalent length. And what you're going to use is you're going to use your longest run. Because supplies typically have several runs, sometimes 15, 20 runs off a single system. You're going to use the one that has the longest total effective length when we're calculating the aspects of our duct system. So you're going to take the longest return, if there's multiple returns, and the longest supply, and that's where we're going to get our information. So in the next podcast, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what we do with this information. You can use some resources like HVAC School if you want to see the information on the screen, which I encourage you to do. Then we're going to go into what you do with that information. Just be aware that every fitting out there has a different effective length. We'll actually talk a little bit about fittings that you can use to decrease the effective length to get the most out of your duct system. But we'll do that at a later date. I want to keep these short and sweet. I want to make sure it's easy to understand, easy to take in each little aspect that we're doing. You have time in between each one. If you want to investigate it online or in one of your textbooks, you can. So that's what we're going to do. So that's it for this one. I know it's short and sweet. It's only about 7 minutes long. But I figure since we're doing these once every couple days here, that'll be fine. So guys, I'll see you around for the next one. There's still going to be some more stories out there, some more crazy stuff, some more interviews. But I like the way we're going right now, so we're going to stick with it for the next few podcasts. So I look forward to seeing you next time, where we learn more about some Manual D stuff. And don't you forget, guys, my name's Zach, and I am the tradesman. Guys that have listened to us at HVAC Shop Talk for a while have heard us talk about getting a free Zoom Lock toolkit with the purchase of a certain amount of Zoom Lock flame-free refrigerant fittings. Well, that's true. If you purchase 350 of the flame-free Zoom Lock fittings, you can get a free tool with that. But what you might not know is if you go to the Zoom Lock Roadshow and make that purchase, you can get it for 300 Zoom Lock flame-free refrigerant fittings. That's quite a deal, guys. Go to ZoomLockRoadshow.com and find out where that truck's at so you can flag it down and get your Zoom Lock tool today.